a parent plus loan. That stands for parent loan for undergraduate students. That is not something that you have to borrow, that your parents have to borrow, and it's something that you should consider as an option when you're figuring out how to pay the balance due. So then you want to figure out what those expenses are, subtract the gift aid, subtract the loans, and don't forget about those fees that I talked about. And that tells you how much you're going to have to pay to the university over the course of the year. And so what you really want to do as you're doing this comparison is look at the merit money, or excuse me, the gift aid from the expenses to determine if, I think the examples you used were Framingham and LaSalle. So if you're going to Framingham State and the cost is, and I'm just going to put this number out there, $25,000, and they're giving you $15,000 in scholarship, then start with the cost of $10,000. And then if LaSalle costs $60,000, but they're giving you $45,000, then the cost for LaSalle is $15,000. And then from there, work through your loans to determine how much can I borrow, how much do I want to borrow, and never forgetting that this is a 4-year journey. So you're not just talking about borrowing for 1 year, you're talking about borrowing potentially for 4 years. So that's how I want you to think about it. And I'm happy to answer questions now or in the end to talk more about that. But it's very important to think about how much is this ultimately going to cost you out of pocket and through borrowing, and how do you limit your borrowing so that you can afford to borrow what you're talking about borrowing. All right, and my screen has frozen, so let's see if I can, there we go. So let's see, I think I talked about all of these except for this last bullet. If your circumstances have changed, or if you have determined that after you've completed this worksheet and you see the 5 schools that you're comparing, and if LaSalle would just give you another $5,000 so that it was more apples to apples with Framingham State, and you want to ask them for more money, you can, and now's the time to do it. In many cases, the school will require you to submit some sort of documentation or letter saying why you want more money. It could be my income that was reported on my financial aid applications was inflated because I got all sorts of stimulus money due to the pandemic that I'm not going to get this year. So you're calculating my need based on something that doesn't exist for this current year. Can you recalculate? So that's one example. Another example is another school that I don't like as much as your school is giving me $5,000 more. Can you do anything for me to make that more compatible? Schools may or may not give you $500, $1,000, $1,500 just because you ask them. So it is worth going back and asking them for additional funds, especially if you have a reason to ask them, meaning you feel like your need has changed. You want to do that as soon as possible, because financial aid offices, as you can imagine, are trying to get through all of these in time for May 1st so that you can make your decision. If you wait to get that appeal letter in, you might have to make your decision before hearing back from them on any appeals that you're doing. The next couple of slides talks about savings. So when you're talking about how to pay for college, you're talking about past income, and that's the financial aid forms. You're talking about current income. We'll talk about payment plans in a second. And you're talking about future income, that's loans. The savings is your past income, what you've been saving towards up until senior year of high school. So these are on the screen are the different kinds of savings that you might have. The two that I'm going to talk about specifically are part of the 529 family, and there's a prepaid tuition plan and a a 529 plan. And basically the deck has instructions on how to withdraw that money if your family has been saving in them. Again, I'm not going to go through that now because I want to make sure that have enough time for Q&A. But if you've got questions specifically about how you work the savings into things, I'm happy to talk to you about how to get that money and get it sent to your schools, or to you if you're going to a school out of state and the U plan didn't work for you for an in-state school. That's getting more complicated than it needs to.
Lori,
Yep.
we do have one question about the financial aid appeal.
Sure.
Wondering, to whom do you appeal, admissions or the financial aid office?
Financial aid office.
Thank you.
Yep, you bet. So a way to balance out how you pay for school is using a interest-free monthly payment plan. So say you get this bill from Framingham State for $10,000, and you're like, well, do they really expect me to be able to pay just $10,000 out of pocket, or $5,000 in the fall and $5,000 in the spring? I can't really do that. But what I can do is pay $500 a month from my current income through a payment plan. So it's worth looking into. If you think that you fall into that category, you can create payment plans for anywhere from 5 to 12 months. There's no interest charges. There's usually a small fee, $75 to enroll in it. It really does help families minimize borrowing, because all of a sudden you're not borrowing that $10,000. Say out of that $10,000 that's due, you can pay $2,000 from your monthly income. That means you're only borrowing $8,000 instead of $10,000. So things to think about are when you're looking at how can I make this work. The interest-free monthly payment plans are huge. Every school has one. And the only thing I'll say is, once you make the decision to accept at a school, the plans typically start in May. So you're going to jump right on that bandwagon, even though you haven't gotten your official invoice yet. That's the only sort of confusing thing to me about payment plans for freshmen. Say a payment plan isn't going to work for you and you've got to borrow that whole $10,000. There are things that you should do aside from determining, can I afford to borrow $10,000, and over 4 years, that's $40,000. So you will get better interest rates the better your credit is. So know your credit history, and there's ways to do that. Borrow only what you need. So in that example that I just gave you, if you only need to borrow $8,000, then that's all you should borrow. You shouldn't borrow $10,000. I've talked about the 4 years. Think about fixed rate versus variable interest rates. Interest rates right now are on the rise because of inflation. So fixed rate loans might be a better bet in the next couple of years because they're going to be stable. You'll always understand what your monthly payment is. Understand what your timeline is for repayment. There are some private loans where you're paying them back in 10 years. There are some private loans where you're paying them back in 15 or 20 years. There are some that start while you're in school, and some that let you defer until after you have graduated or stop being enrolled in school. So it's really important to understand all those little details about the loans that you might borrow. We do have, MEFA has 2 webinars coming up on June 1st and July 7th. If you want to attend those, that's going to go into a whole lot more detail about comparing private loans, the PLUS loan versus Sallie Mae versus MEFA, whatever the loans are that you're exploring. So you should mark that in your calendar if you think that that's going to be something that you want to learn more about. On MEFA's website, we have a student loan payment calculator, and that basically lets you put in how much you need to borrow and what it might look like in terms of interest rates and monthly payments for the loans that MEFA offers. I'm not selling you MEFA loans. I'm just saying it's good to get in there and just sort of see, well, okay, if I have to borrow $10,000 and this is a comparable interest rate, this is what my monthly payments are going to look like. And so it's good to go in and explore. Fall semester bills are going to be sent in early summer. That you should be applying for any loans if you need them. at least 2 weeks before the bill is due. They're usually very quick. And what happens is you put in the application, you get a credit decision within minutes in most cases. And then the lender will communicate with your school that you've been approved for this loan. The school will then certify that loan. And then after that certification has happened, the money will get sent to the school. So you want to give at least 2 weeks, but it doesn't, the school doesn't have to have the actual money by the time the bill is due. So long as they have the approval notification, you should be good. And I've talked about payment plans. People often ask, what happens if I get private scholarship or a local scholarship? Are they worth doing? Are there things out there that I can do to help my financial aid letter? So I'm going to say that the folks at North, Miss Hannenberger, Miss Hall, Miss Garrity, all have information on local scholarships that you should be applying to. Some of them require you to write a paragraph or two or an essay. Some of them require you to demonstrate need. Some don't have anything to do with any of that, and they just want a bassoonist who plays in their local orchestra and needs an extra $250. So it's worth checking out because the requirements can vary dramatically on who's set up a scholarship to honor or help a different population. Some of the online fees I've put down here, but you should know that once you receive an outside scholarship, if it's getting paid directly to the school, then it might impact your financial aid award as it is if the award has been awarded to your calculated need. If that's the case, most schools will reduce your work study or your loan as opposed to your gift aid because they don't want to jeopardize you. They don't want to harm you for doing the work to get this extra money. But it's definitely worth checking out to see if you can get a couple $100 extra or $1,000 extra. We're so lucky in Massachusetts because we have these incredible programs that the state has pulled together, and I only have 2 listed here. But as Ms. Hall indicated earlier, Mass-based come into chat. You should go chat with them if you're not sort of clear on your direction yet. The Mass Transfer Program lets you enroll at a community college and then move from that community college to a 4-year state school with a guaranteed credit transfer. So the credits that you've taken at the community college, you can be there for up to 2.5 years, a tuition credit, a freeze on tuition, and it lets you start off and save some money the first 2 years, graduate from a senior college, and have that degree from UMass Amherst, UMass Lowell, any of the state schools. And it's just an incredible opportunity that I feel we're so lucky to have. And then the New England Board of Higher Education also has this program called Tuition Break. And it's basically takes schools and has not transfer agreements. It has agreements with other state schools like Maine or Connecticut, as an example, and you can get in-state tuition at some of the other state schools. So it's worth looking at that nebi.org tuition break if one of the schools you're considering is a state school in one of our partner states out of Massachusetts. Financial aid office is there to help you. You've been admitted to their school. They want to see how they can help you afford to come to their school. As Ms. Hall indicated, you want to go to the visiting student, the admitted students day. You want to chat with them for the 15-minute appointment, talk to them about what you need, and hear what they've got to say. They want to help you get to their school. Be patient with them. And this is all information, well, pay the deposit by the deadline, create your plan to pay the balance due. And MEFA, we're here as your resource. So you can call us at any time. The folks at North have my information. Many of you I've already spoken to. So use us and use me, and we'll get you through this. And that is the end of that.